Well, we're back once again with my friend Glenn Powell. And Glenn, you've brought us to the point where we realize maybe we have good study Bibles. We do. We have great study Bibles. But maybe we don't even own what you would call a reading Bible. So take us through that. You're now doing a whole new work apart from your former organization, and you guys are helping to answer that need.
Right. So I'm with a group of guys. We're starting a new Bible nonprofit called the Institute for Bible Reading. We were all at Biblica, kind of came out of there to do this new work exclusively. But basically, there's a great new trend, Stephen, in Bible publishing, where almost every major translation now is coming out with the Reader's Edition. So rather than making every single Bible a reference edition, there's this emergence of Reader's Bibles. So they're single column, nice design on the page, built for reading, the right amount of white space, margin matters.
This looks like a novel or like a book.
Right. One of the things we could say about this is kind of the rediscovery of the importance of design.
This looks like
in
your
Bible
book.
publishing.
I mean, so here's your book that everybody is supposed to be reading. I see two big wide columns, one on each page.
Yep.
And I read, now this is Book of Samuel and Kings, and it looks the same. And I don't see any verse marks, but I do see a reference in the corner.
Yes. So what's nice about these Reader's Editions is they put the chapter and verse range up on the page or sometimes down at the bottom.
Okay.
So you can still find your place very quickly. So if you're following somebody who's referencing some particular passage, you just find that range really quickly, and then you find the passage in context as you're scanning the page, and it's still easy to use. So you don't lose that, but what you actually have is now when I'm reading the letters of Paul to the churches, they look like letters on the page. You can see the opening, the body, and the closing. You can see the stories of Jesus in the Gospels. You can see Proverbs, song lyrics, and Psalms. All these different kinds of literature, which were inspired by the Holy Spirit, now show up on the page in a way where you immediately see, okay, what kind of book is this? This looks like I'm reading poetry. So your brain says, how do I read poetry? It's different than prose narrative. So you're getting into the right kind of mental space for reading the Bible well, and there's no stop marks, right? There's no stop signs, big chapter numbers telling you you've read and it's time to stop. You read the complete story as you're going. So these Reader's Editions is a nice thing. And so all the major translations, as I say, are coming out in them. And I think our vision for the world is, what if everybody who had a Bible had a Reader's Edition, not just a reference edition?
So I see in the book, your text, you talk about a private Bible, and I assume as opposed to a public Bible, or
another thing that happened. It's interesting how these things all happened in the modern period. We also went to getting, for the very first time, because of the advance of the printing press and the technology and translations into everybody's languages, everybody could own their own Bible for the first time. So it's interesting, right at the time that chapters and verses came into the Bible, people also started getting their own private copy of the Bible for the first time in history.
That probably corresponded a little bit with the printing press and those kinds of things.
Yeah, so what happened is we started to think, wow, the thing to do with the Bible is to read it by yourself. And that became kind of the centerpiece of our engagement with the Bible. Whereas back in the birth of the Bible and all the way through the history of the Bible, up until the modern period, anytime people were engaging the Bible, they were engaging in community, because not everybody had their own copy.
And there may only be one copy for each local congregation.
So going back to the synagogue, all the way through the early church, people gathered together, listening to the Bible being read and engaging it in community, discussion in community. So this is another thing that was lost in the modern period. So one of the things we're trying to do is get people reading the Bible together again, and not thinking that I always have to read it only with my own filters in place, right? I think all of us screen out certain things that we're not interested in, highlight other things that we're especially interested in. And when I read in community, there are things that I would tend to gloss over that somebody else says, wow, this is so important, and it struck out to me. And if I listen to that, if we're reading together, it's just a richer experience of the Bible. Actually, the way the Bible was made to really be a community formation book, not just a me and God in private book.
You know, I attend, my wife and I are involved in leadership at a church here in Colorado Springs, New Life Downtown it's called, and a couple of years ago, you came and spoke initially at our adult Sunday school class, and then you helped lead our congregation through a community kind of experience that we were participating in, my wife and I were participating in as well. And I know you've been doing that with a lot of different churches and groups and denominations. Some of the students, some are brand new, they're at the King's University just starting out, but I got a number of students here who've been around a while. Some of them are even pastors and in leadership at their churches. Why don't you tell some of them about some of the opportunities to bring their faith community into Bible engagement? Because it was a great experience for us and for our church.
Yeah, it's transformative, I think, Stephen, for churches to have this experience that they've never had before with the Bible, and their whole church is involved. So the idea is you get a whole church reading a big part of the Bible, say the New Testament, all together for about 8 weeks. So everybody reads alone, about 10 to 12 pages a day, but they get together once a week in a small group. And rather than doing Bible study, it's more like a book club. So instead of kind of a directed curriculum telling you what to look for, you're simply reading. By the time you get to the group, you've had read 50 to 60 pages, and you come kind of loaded with questions. And the facilitator simply asks open-ended questions. What did you see for the first time? What did you learn about how to love God and your neighbor? Was there anything that bothered you as you were reading this week? Because people are reading a lot. They're reading straight through the New Testament in 8 weeks. And when you have the whole church, the kids, the young people, parents, the adults, everybody's doing this together. So it's transformative.
We're working this in with our children's ministry and our small groups and the whole congregation.
Yep. So you've kind of put everything else on hold for a while and say, look, we are all in. So everywhere you go in the church in those 8 weeks, everybody's talking about, they're reading through the same stories, reading through the Gospels and then the letters, and they're having just impromptu discussions. It's an in-depth kind of immersive experience in the Bible. And many people say, truth be told, I never have read through the Bible before. So they're doing that for the first time. It's exciting. They're coming with questions. For the first time, they're coming to the pastor and saying, instead of talking about the color of the carpet they don't like, they're asking questions about the Bible because they're reading things. So it's a tremendous, really fresh experience with the Bible for a whole church, which is an exciting thing to do. And then they have the option of doing this kind of as a pattern through the years. As you read through all the volumes of the Bible, you can discover the Old Testament, which is hardly ever read. You can do the New Testament. You can get into a rhythm of regular community Bible engagement.
Wow. Well, I'm going to ask Glenn to come back one more time if you're willing. You've been living at our house for 3 weeks now, and hopefully, you change your shirt.
Kick me out whenever you're tired.
But would it be okay if I provide some contact information for your organization, about your organization to our students?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Then we will absolutely do that. Thanks again, Glenn.